Ethan Cole wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Far from it. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, he learned early on that hard work was the only ticket to success. His father worked long hours at a factory, and his mother juggled 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Despite their struggles, Ethan's parents always emphasized the importance of kindness, honesty, and perseverance. These values stuck with him throughout his life. As a teenager, Ethan discovered his love for cooking while helping his mom prepare dinner. There was something magical about turning simple ingredients into meals that brought people together. He started experimenting in the kitchen, creating dishes that delighted his family. Friends and neighbors soon caught wind of his talent and began asking him to cook for small gatherings. That's when the idea first sparked in his mind. Maybe one day, he could turn this passion into something bigger. But dreams don't come easy, especially when you're starting with nothing. After high school, Ethan took odd jobs to save money. He washed dishes at diners, stocked shelves at grocery stores, and even delivered pizzas late into the night. Every paycheck went toward his goal, a food truck where he could share his creations with the world. It wasn't glamorous work, but Ethan didn't mind. He knew every step was bringing him closer to his dream. Finally, after years of saving and planning, Ethan bought an old, beat-up food truck. He spent weeks fixing it up himself, painting it bright red with bold white lettering that read, Cole's Corner. On opening day, he parked near a busy park, his heart pounding with excitement and nerves. Would anyone show up? To his relief, curious passers-by stopped to check out the menu. By the end of the day, Ethan had served over 100 customers, many of whom raved about his juicy burgers and crispy fries. Word spread quickly about the friendly guy with the food truck, who made some of the best comfort food in town. Lines grew longer each week, and Ethan found himself working harder than ever before. He woke up before sunrise to prep ingredients, stood for hours under the scorching sun, and stayed up late cleaning equipment. Yet, despite the exhaustion, he felt alive. This was what he was meant to do. Over time, Ethan's loyal following grew. People weren't just coming for the food, they came for the experience. Ethan greeted every customer with a smile, remembering regulars by name and asking how their week was going. He listened to their stories, shared laughs, and sometimes even offered advice. Cole's Corner became more than just a food truck. It was a place where people felt seen and valued. Eventually, Ethan realized he was ready for the next big leap. With the help of a local investor who believed in his vision, he opened a brick-and-mortar restaurant right in the heart of town. The grand opening was a huge success, drawing crowds eager to see what all the fuss was about. From the cozy decor to the mouth-watering menu, everything about Cole's Corner screamed warmth and authenticity, and at the center of it all was Ethan, still greeting guests with the same genuine smile that had won hearts years ago. Little did Ethan know his journey was far from over. Running a successful restaurant came with its own set of challenges, and not everyone would have his best interests at heart. But for now, Ethan reveled in the joy of seeing his dream come true. He had built something truly special, brick by brick and burger by burger. It was a typical Friday evening at Cole's Corner, the kind of night that made Ethan proud of everything he had built. The restaurant buzzed with energy. Families gathered, around tables sharing plates of hearty comfort food, couples laughing over candlelit dinners, and groups of friends clinking glasses in celebration. The air smelled of sizzling steaks, freshly baked bread, and warm apple pie. For Ethan, nights like these were a reminder of why he had worked so hard to get here. Ethan moved between the dining room and the kitchen, checking on customers and ensuring everything ran smoothly. His staff knew him as someone who led by example. If they were busy, he was right there alongside them, rolling up his sleeves to help wherever needed. But tonight, something felt different. As he scanned the room, 2 men walked through the door, their sharp suits and polished shoes standing out among the casual crowd. They looked around expectantly, clearly not used to waiting for anything, or anyone. One of the hostesses greeted them warmly and asked if they had reservations. "Reservations?" One of the men scoffed, raising an eyebrow. "We don't need reservations, just give us your best table." Ethan overheard the exchange and stepped forward with a polite smile. "Good evening, gentlemen," he said. "Unfortunately, we're fully booked right now, but I'd be happy to add you to the wait list." The taller of the two men frowned, clearly unaccustomed to hearing the word no. He leaned closer to Ethan, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Do you have any idea who we are? We're investors. Big ones. If we wanted, we could buy this whole place and turn it into something actually worth our time." Ethan didn't flinch. He kept his tone calm but firm. "I appreciate your interest, sir, but everyone follows the same policy here. First come, first served. It's only fair to our other guests." The second man chimed in, his tone mocking. "Fair? You think this is about fairness? Let me tell you something, buddy. People like you don't last long unless they learn how to play the game." The comment stung, but Ethan refused to let it show. Instead, he gestured toward the cozy waiting area. "If you'd like, I can offer you drinks while you wait, or perhaps another time might work better for you." His politeness seemed to infuriate them even more. The taller man glared at him, his face red with anger. "You'll regret this," he snapped before turning on his heel and storming out, his companion trailing behind him. As the door slammed shut, Ethan exhaled deeply. He hated confrontations, but he also believed in standing by his principles. Every customer deserved respect, but so did his team and the loyal patrons who had been patiently waiting for their tables. Still, as he returned to his duties, a nagging thought lingered in the back of his mind. Who exactly were those men? And what did they mean when they said he'd regret refusing them? For the rest of the evening, Ethan pushed the incident to the back of his mind. He focused on making sure his guests left happy, chatting with families, refilling water glasses, and thanking regulars for their continued support. By closing time, the restaurant was spotless, the cash register balanced, and the staff headed home for a well-deserved rest. But as Ethan locked up and turned off the lights, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his gut. Something told him this wasn't the last he'd hear from those men. Little did he know their words weren't empty threats. They were a promise. What happened next would test Ethan's strength, resilience, and faith in humanity. Yet even in the face of adversity, Ethan reminded himself of the values his parents had instilled in him: integrity, humility, and perseverance. Whatever came his way, he vowed to handle it with grace. And so, as the city slept and the streets grew quiet, Ethan prepared himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, building a dream was never easy, but giving up wasn't an option either. The next morning, Ethan woke up with the usual routine, brewing a strong cup of coffee, flipping through the day's schedule, and mentally preparing for another busy day at Cole's Corner. But as he scrolled through his phone while sipping his coffee, something felt off. His heart sank when he opened the restaurant's social media accounts. Dozens of negative reviews flooded the pages, each one harsher than the last. "This place is a joke," one review read. "Rude staff, dirty tables, and terrible food. Don't waste your time." Another chimed in, "I've never been treated so poorly in my life. The owner has no respect for customers." Ethan stared at the screen, disbelief washing over him. These accusations were completely false. He prided himself on cleanliness, quality, and customer service. So why were people suddenly trashing his business? Digging deeper, Ethan noticed a pattern. Most of the reviews came from accounts that looked suspiciously new, created just days ago. Even stranger, many of them mentioned the same vague complaints about unprofessional behavior and poor management. It didn't take long for Ethan to connect the dots. The two men from the night before must have orchestrated this smear campaign. They wanted revenge, and they weren't holding back. As the day went on, the impact became impossible to ignore. Calls poured into the restaurant, not from eager diners but from concerned regulars asking if everything was okay. Reservations for the week dropped dramatically, leaving large gaps in what should have been a fully booked calendar. Some loyal customers admitted they had seen the reviews and questioned whether they should still trust Cole's Corner. For the first time since opening, Ethan felt the ground beneath him begin to crumble. He tried reaching out to friends and acquaintances, explaining that the reviews were fake. "It's all lies," he told anyone who would listen. You know, me, I'd never let things get that bad here. While some believed him, others seemed hesitant, unsure of what, or whom, to believe. The uncertainty gnawed at Ethan. How could years of hard work be undone by a few fabricated words online? To make matters worse, word spread beyond social media. A local blogger picked up the story, writing a scathing article titled, "Is Cole's Corner Losing Its Touch?" The piece highlighted the sudden influx of complaints, quoting anonymous sources claiming the restaurant had grown complacent. Ethan couldn't believe it. Anonymous? Complacent? None of it added up. Yet, without evidence, to disprove the claims, the damage continued to mount. By the end of the day, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at the wall. His mind raced with questions. Should he respond publicly? Fight back against the accusations? Or maybe hire someone to clean up the mess? Each option felt overwhelming, especially since he wasn't sure where to start. He had always handled challenges head-on, but this felt different. This wasn't just an angry customer or a broken appliance. It was an attack on everything he had worked so hard to build. What hurt most was the betrayal. Ethan had dedicated his life to creating a space where people felt welcome, where families could gather and strangers could become friends. He thought he had earned their trust. Now doubt lingered in the air, planted there by people who didn't care about truth or fairness. It made him question everything, not just his business, but himself. Was he doing enough? Could he have done something differently? But amidst the chaos, a small voice inside reminded him of who he was. Ethan hadn't gotten this far by giving up when things got tough. He remembered the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, and the unwavering belief that he could turn his dreams into reality. If those men wanted to bring him down, they had underestimated him. Ethan knew he couldn't control what others said about him, but he could control how he responded. And deep down, he vowed to prove them wrong, not out of anger, but out of love for the community that had supported him. With renewed determination, Ethan began sketching out a plan. He wouldn't let fear dictate his next move. Instead, he would find a way to remind everyone what Cole's Corner truly stood for. Because sometimes, adversity isn't the end. It's the beginning of something even greater. That night, after locking up the restaurant, Ethan didn't go home. Instead, he stayed behind in his quiet office, surrounded by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft glow of a desk lamp. The weight of the day pressed heavily on his shoulders. But instead of giving in to frustration, he found himself drawn to a small box tucked away on a shelf. It was filled with mementos from his journey, photos, letters, and trinkets that told the story of how Cole's Corner came to be. He pulled out an old, faded photograph of his food truck on its very first day. In the picture, Ethan stood smiling beside the bright red vehicle, his arms crossed proudly despite the exhaustion etched on his face. Behind him, a modest line of customers waited patiently, their faces lit with curiosity and anticipation. That day had been nerve-wracking, but it was also one of the happiest moments of his life. He remembered the way people's eyes lit up when they took their first bite of his signature burger, the way strangers became friends as they shared stories. While waiting in line, back then success wasn't measured by numbers or reviews. It was about connection. Ethan flipped through more items in the box, handwritten notes from grateful customers thanking him for making their birthdays special, a child's drawing of the restaurant taped to the fridge, and even a crumpled napkin with a hastily scribbled recipe idea that later became one of his best-selling dishes. Each piece reminded him of why he started this journey, not for fame or fortune, but to create something meaningful, something real. As he sifted through these treasures, a sense of clarity washed over him. The negativity swirling around him couldn't erase what he had built. Those two men might have tried to tarnish his reputation, but they couldn't take away the trust he had earned from his community. They couldn't undo the late nights spent perfecting recipes, the early mornings, prepping ingredients, or the countless hours spent listening to customers' stories. Cole's Corner wasn't just a restaurant. It was a reflection of who Ethan was at his core: hardworking, kind, and resilient. With renewed focus, Ethan grabbed a notepad and began jotting down ideas. If those men wanted to spread lies, he would counter with truth. If they sought to divide, he would unite. What if he hosted an event, a celebration of everything Cole's Corner stood for? An evening dedicated to gratitude, where locals could come together to share meals, laughter, and memories. He envisioned long tables stretching across the dining room filled with families, friends, and neighbors. There would be free food, live, music, and heartfelt speeches from regulars who had become like family to him. He'd call it Community Appreciation Night. The thought energized him. He knew such an event wouldn't magically erase the bad reviews or silence the critics overnight, but it could remind people of the heart behind the business. Word of mouth had always been his strongest ally, and now more than ever he needed to lean on it. To spread the word, he decided to partner with Mia Thompson, a popular local blogger known for shining a light on grassroots efforts in the community. Her posts often highlighted small businesses doing big things, and Ethan hoped she'd see the value in sharing his story. By the time Ethan finally left the restaurant, the sun was beginning to rise. The streets were still quiet, bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't going to be easy, but he had faced challenges before, and come out stronger every time. As he walked to his car, he glanced back at the building that housed his dream. It looked the same as it always had, yet somehow different. It wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to what could be achieved with passion and perseverance. Ethan climbed into his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He thought about the road ahead, the planning, the outreach, the uncertainty, but he also thought about the people who believed in him. His staff, his customers, his community, they were the ones who mattered most. And if he could remind them of that bond, of the warmth and authenticity that defined Cole's Corner, then no smear campaign could stand in his way. For the first time since the chaos began, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. He didn't know exactly how things would turn out, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let anyone else write his story. Not anymore. Ethan threw himself into planning Community Appreciation Night with the same passion and dedication he had poured into every other aspect of Cole's Corner. He wanted this event to feel personal, like a warm hug for anyone who walked through the door. The goal wasn't just to counteract the negative reviews. It was to remind people of the soul of his restaurant, the heart that had kept it thriving for years. He started by reaching out to Mia Thompson, the local blogger whose posts often celebrated small businesses doing meaningful work. Ethan sent her a heartfelt email explaining everything: the smear campaign, the impact it had on his staff and customers, and his vision for the appreciation night. He included photos from the early days of his food truck and shared stories of how much the community meant to him. To his relief, Mia responded almost immediately. She agreed to help promote the event and even offered to attend herself, intrigued by Ethan's resilience and determination. Next, Ethan rallied his team. He gathered his staff during their morning meeting and explained the plan. At first, some of them were skeptical. How could one event undo all the damage done? But as Ethan spoke, his voice filled with conviction, their doubts began to fade. This isn't about fighting back, he told them. It's about showing everyone what we stand for. If we can remind people why they fell in love with Cole's Corner in the first place, nothing else will matter. Together, they brainstormed ways to make the evening unforgettable. The menu would feature classic favorites alongside new creations inspired by customer feedback. Live music would fill the air, courtesy of a local band Ethan had worked with before. They decided to decorate the space with string lights and framed photos of happy moments from the restaurant's history. Wedding proposals, birthday celebrations, and candid shots of families laughing together. Every detail was designed to evoke warmth and nostalgia. Word spread quickly thanks to Mia's blog post and social media teasers. Flyers went up around town inviting locals to join the celebration. Cole's Corner invites you to a night of gratitude, good food, and great company, the posters read. Let's come together to celebrate our community and the connections that make life beautiful. People began talking about it everywhere, in coffee shops, at school drop-offs, and even in online forums where the negative reviews had once dominated. On the night of the event, Ethan arrived early to oversee the final preparations. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the restaurant, guests began streaming in. Families, couples, and groups of friends filled the space, their faces lighting up as they took in the cozy atmosphere. Ethan greeted each person personally, thanking them for being part of the journey. Many hugged him tightly, assuring him that they had never doubted him for a second. Mia arrived midway through the evening, camera in hand, ready to capture the magic. She mingled with guests, listening to their stories and snapping photos of smiling faces. One woman tearfully recounted how Ethan had gone above and beyond to accommodate her son's dietary restrictions during a family dinner. A man joked that he'd proposed to his wife at Cole's Corner because it felt like home, a place where love naturally blossomed. These testimonials weren't rehearsed or forced. They came straight from the heart. As the band played upbeat, tunes and servers moved gracefully between tables. Ethan stood near the entrance, watching it all unfold. For the first time in weeks, he felt a deep sense of peace. This was what Cole's Corner was truly about, not fancy decor or trendy dishes, but the simple joy of bringing people together, and judging by the laughter echoing through the room and the plates being cleared with satisfied smiles, the message was clear. The community still believed in him. But the surprises didn't end there. Toward the end of the night, Mia approached Ethan with a grin. "You're going to want to hear this," she said, pulling out her phone. On her screen was a draft of her upcoming article titled "Why Cole's Corner is More Than Just a Restaurant." Her words painted a vivid picture of Ethan's kindness, hard work, and unwavering commitment to his community. She promised to publish it by the next morning, ensuring the story reached thousands of readers across the city. As the clock struck midnight and the last guest departed, Ethan locked up the restaurant, his heart full. The road ahead might still hold challenges, but tonight proved something important. No amount of negativity could overshadow the power of genuine connection. Whatever happened next, Ethan knew he wouldn't face it alone. His community had his pushwar, and that made all the difference. The morning after Community Appreciation Night, Ethan woke up feeling a mix of emotions. There was excitement, knowing the event had gone so well, but also a lingering nervousness about what might come next. Would Mia's article make a difference? Could it undo the damage caused by the false reviews? He tried to push those thoughts aside and focus on the day ahead. After all, he'd done everything he could. Now it was time to let the chips fall where they may. By mid-morning, Mia's article went live online, titled, "Why Cole's Corner is More Than Just a Restaurant." It quickly gained traction. Within hours, shares and comments flooded social media. People praised Ethan for his integrity, his dedication to his craft, and his deep connection to the community. One commenter wrote, "I've been going to Cole's Corner since the food truck days, and this place is a gem. Anyone who says otherwise hasn't taken the time to really know it, or Ethan." Another added, "This is why we need to support local businesses that care about people." But perhaps the most surprising reaction came from an unexpected source. Laura Bennett, one of the city's most respected food critics. Known for her sharp eye and honest reviews, Laura rarely covered smaller establishments unless something truly stood out. Yet here she was, replying to Mia's post with a simple comment. "Sounds like a story worth exploring. I'll be paying a visit soon." Ethan couldn't believe it. Laura Bennett at Cole's Corner? She was legendary in the culinary world, known for her ability to spotlight hidden gems while calling out pretentious spots without hesitation. Her reviews carried weight. They could make or break a restaurant overnight. For her to express interest in visiting felt surreal. Was this finally the turning point he'd hoped for? A few days later, Laura arrived unannounced during lunch service. Dressed casually in jeans and a blazer, she blended in seamlessly with the crowd. Ethan didn't recognize her at first. She simply introduced herself as a customer looking to try the menu. He greeted her warmly, just as he did with everyone else, and recommended a few signature dishes. As she ate, she observed quietly the bustling kitchen staff, the friendly servers checking on tables, and the genuine smiles exchanged between diners. Everything about the atmosphere spoke volumes. After finishing her meal, Laura approached. "Ethan. You're Ethan Cole, right?" she asked, extending her hand. When he nodded, she introduced herself properly. "I'm Laura Bennett. I read Mia's piece and decided to see for myself what makes this place special." Ethan blinked, momentarily stunned. "Wow," he managed to say. "Thank you for coming. I hope your experience lived up to the hype." Laura smiled thoughtfully. "It did more than that. It reminded me why I fell in love with food writing in the first place. This isn't just a restaurant, Ethan. It's a testament to hard work, authenticity, and community. And trust me when I say, not many places can claim that anymore." Over the next hour, they talked about everything, from Ethan's humble beginnings with the food truck to the recent challenges he'd faced. Laura listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes. By the end of their conversation, she promised to write an honest review of her experience. "Cole's Corner deserves to be recognized for what it truly is," she said firmly. "Leave the rest to me." As Laura left, Ethan felt a surge of gratitude, not just for her kind words, but for the reminder that good things happen when you stay true to yourself. He returned to work, encouraging his team to keep pushing forward. "We've got momentum now," he told them. "Let's show everyone why they should keep coming back." Meanwhile, whispers of Laura's visit spread among regulars and staff alike. Everyone buzzed with anticipation, eagerly awaiting her review. Days turned into a week, and finally the article appeared in the city's largest newspaper. A glowing feature titled, "The Heartbeat of Hospitality: Why Cole's Corner Deserves Your Support." In it, Laura described the warmth of the atmosphere, the quality of the food, and the undeniable charm of its owner. She even addressed the controversy, calling the negative reviews a glaring misrepresentation of a place that embodies the best of what dining should be. The impact was immediate. Calls poured in from people eager to book tables. New faces filled the restaurant nightly, curious to experience the magic Laura had written about. Even some of the skeptics who had doubted Ethan before admitted they were wrong, leaving raving reviews of their own. The tide had officially turned. For Ethan, the victory wasn't just personal, it was proof that kindness and perseverance always find a way to shine through. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he now knew one thing for certain. Cole's Corner was stronger than ever, thanks to. In the weeks following Laura Bennett's glowing review, Cole's Corner transformed into a bustling hub of activity. The restaurant was busier than ever before, with lines stretching out the door and reservations filling up weeks in advance. People came from all over the city and even neighboring towns to experience the place everyone was talking about. For Ethan, it felt surreal to see his hard work pay off in such a profound way. Yet, amidst the whirlwind of success, he remained grounded, always remembering the values that had brought him this far. One evening, as Ethan stood near the entrance greeting guests, he noticed two familiar figures lingering awkwardly by the hostess stand. His stomach tightened when he realized who they were, the same men who had tried to ruin his reputation. They looked different now, less confident and more hesitant. Ethan debated whether to approach them or let them leave unnoticed. But something inside urged him to take the high ground. With a deep breath, he walked over. "Good evening," Ethan said calmly, his tone polite but firm. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The taller man shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. We heard good things about your restaurant," he mumbled, gesturing vaguely at the menu board. "Thought we'd check it out." Ethan studied their faces for a moment, noting the faint hint of embarrassment beneath their polished exteriors. He could have confronted them then and there, called them out for the damage they'd caused, but instead, he chose kindness. "Well, welcome to Cole's Corner," Ethan replied with a small smile. "I hope you enjoy your meal." Without waiting for a response, he turned and signaled to one of his servers to seat them. As the men disappeared into the dining room, Ethan exhaled deeply. Letting go of resentment wasn't easy, but holding on to anger would only weigh him down. Besides, seeing them reduced to mere customers just like anyone else was its own form of justice. Meanwhile, the positive momentum continued to build. Encouraged by the surge in popularity, Ethan decided it was time to expand. He leased a second location across town, envisioning a space where he could experiment with new ideas while staying true to the heart of Cole's Corner. This new spot would feature an open kitchen, allowing diners to watch chefs prepare their meals, and a community table designed to bring strangers together. It was a bold step, but Ethan knew he had the support of his team and loyal patrons to make it happen. The grand opening of the second location drew massive crowds, including many regulars from the original restaurant. Local news outlets covered the event, highlighting Ethan's journey from a struggling food truck owner to a celebrated restaurateur. Interviews often circled back to the controversy, but Ethan handled each question with grace. "Every challenge taught me something valuable," he told reporters. "It's not about what happens to you, it's how you respond that defines you." As the months passed, Ethan found joy not just in running successful businesses, but in nurturing the connections he'd built along the way. Families celebrated milestones at Cole's Corner, couples fell in love over shared meals, and friendships blossomed between strangers seated at the community table. Ethan made it a point to visit both locations regularly, ensuring that the warmth and authenticity people loved weren't lost in the growth. And yet, despite all the accolades and achievements, Ethan never forgot the lessons he'd learned during those difficult days. The smear campaign had tested him in ways he hadn't anticipated, but it also reinforced what truly mattered: staying true to himself, leaning on his community, and trusting in the power of resilience. Those two men who had once sought to destroy him. They faded into obscurity, their names rarely mentioned anymore. Occasionally, Ethan spotted them around town, avoiding his gaze entirely. It was clear they regretted their actions, not because they apologized, but because they saw firsthand the strength of character they had underestimated. One quiet afternoon, as Ethan sat in his office reviewing plans for future projects, he reflected on how far he'd come. From a young boy watching his parents work tirelessly to provide for their family, to a man standing at the helm of 2 thriving restaurants, his journey had been anything but ordinary. But through every twist and turn, one thing remained constant: his belief in the goodness of people and the importance of creating spaces where they felt valued. Ethan leaned back in his chair, glancing at the framed photo on his desk, a candid shot from Community Appreciation Night, capturing the laughter and joy of dozens of guests. It served as a reminder of why he did what he did. Success wasn't measured by numbers or accolades. It was about making a difference, however small, in the lives of others. And if Cole's Corner could continue to do that, Ethan knew he'd already won. Months turned into a year, and Cole's Corner wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The second location had become as beloved as the original, with its open kitchen and community table fostering connections that felt almost magical. Strangers struck up conversations over shared meals, families celebrated milestones surrounded by warmth, and Ethan's team worked tirelessly to ensure every guest left with a smile. For Ethan, it was more than success. It was proof that kindness and hard work could overcome even the toughest challenges. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan found himself sitting at his usual spot in the corner of the original restaurant, sipping coffee and watching the world wake up outside the window. It was a rare moment of calm amidst the chaos of running 2 busy restaurants. As he scrolled through social media on his phone, something caught his eye: a post from one of the men who had tried to ruin him. The man, whose name was Richard, had written a public apology. "A while back, I made a mistake," the post began. "I let my ego get the better of me, and in doing so, I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. To Ethan Cole and everyone at Cole's Corner, I'm sorry." Ethan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He hadn't expected this, not after all this time. The post went on to acknowledge how wrong they had been to attack Ethan and praised the restaurant for its quality and character. It ended with a simple statement: "Sometimes life teaches you lessons in unexpected ways. This was mine." Ethan sat there for a long time, processing what he'd read. Part of him wanted to feel vindicated, to relish the fact that Richard had publicly admitted his wrongdoing, but instead he felt compassion. He knew how hard it must have been for Richard to write those words, to swallow his pride and own up to his mistakes. And in that moment, Ethan realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of anger, it was about giving others the chance to grow, too. Later that day, Ethan sent Richard a private message. "Thank you for your apology," he wrote. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and I respect that. If you ever want to sit down and talk or share a meal, I'd be happy to make that happen." He didn't expect an immediate response, but to his surprise, Richard replied within minutes. "I'd like that," he said, "and thank you for handling everything with such grace. You've earned my admiration." Their eventual meeting was quiet and uneventful, held over coffee at the original Cole's Corner. They talked about their lives, their struggles, and the lessons they'd learned along the way. By the end of the conversation, they weren't enemies. They were two people who understood each other a little better. Richard promised to spread the word about Cole's Corner, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely believed in what Ethan had built. As the months passed, Ethan continued to focus on what mattered most: his community. He launched initiatives to support local farmers, offering them a platform to showcase their produce in his restaurants. He partnered with schools to provide cooking classes for kids, teaching them the joy of creating something with their own hands. And during the holidays, he organized food drives, ensuring no family went hungry in the neighborhoods he called home. Looking back, Ethan marveled at how much had changed since those early days of struggle. He thought about the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, and the moments when giving up seemed like the easiest choice. But he also thought about the people who had stood by him: his parents, whose values guided him; his staff, who worked tirelessly alongside him; and his customers, who reminded him why he started this journey in the first place. Without them, none of this would have been possible. On a chilly winter evening, Ethan stood behind the counter of the original Cole's Corner, watching as laughter filled the room and plates were passed around tables. His gaze lingered on a family celebrating a birthday, their faces glowing in the soft light of the overhead lamps. In that moment, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for where he was, but for how far he'd come. Life had thrown curveballs at him, testing his patience, his resilience, and his faith in humanity. But through it all, Ethan had stayed true to himself, refusing to compromise his values or lose sight of what truly mattered. Success wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about building something meaningful, something that brought people together and reminded them of the beauty in connection. And as Ethan locked up the restaurant that night, snow beginning to fall gently outside, he smiled to himself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he